Well, good afternoon and welcome to the 2021 Educational Recognitions Awards and last lecture. It's so good to see people here today in the Sherman Center auditorium and to be with so many of you who are watching virtually. This is the first in-person event since the beginning of the pandemic, and it seemed to me the fact that we could gather here in the auditorium safely and comfortably is truly a testament to the awe-inspiring power of science and medicine and a reflection of our innovative and comprehensive COVID-19 mitigation strategy, which was developed and implemented by Provost Flott and our UMass Medical School infection control team, and I thank all of them. With a robust infection control plan working so well on campus and life-saving vaccines now available to all Americans, we can begin to bring back some semblance of normalcy to our institution. And it seems to me wholly fitting that our first in-person event during this pandemic is a celebration of our educators and teachers who give meaning and breathe life into our educational mission and who are exceptional stewards of our learners' education. The faculty members receiving awards today exemplify the roles of teacher and mentor, and in the second half of today's program, we'll have the privilege to learn from one of our most beloved and best educators when Dr. Mai-Lan Rogoff delivers the last lecture entitled, "It's All Jazz." I'll return to the podium to transition to that last lecture in a bit, but now it's my pleasure to invite Dean Joan Vitello of the Graduate School of Nursing to begin our Educational Recognition Awards. Dean Vitello.
Thank you, Chancellor. The first award is the Dean's Award for Outstanding Faculty Contribution to Graduate Nursing Education. This is an award that I have had the privilege to bestow on a faculty member of the GSN. This faculty member really needs no introduction, as she is well known throughout the UMass community. I have come to know and respect immensely the work of this outstanding nurse, researcher, mentor, and scholar. The recipient of this year's Graduate School of Nursing Dean's Award for Faculty Excellence is Dr. Carol Bova. Dr. Bova is well known for not only being a GSN PhD faculty member, but she has also been the chairperson of our Institutional Review Board, a distinction as a nurse that is truly noteworthy, since she is one of maybe 2 or 3 nationally to hold such a distinctive position. Since serving as the GSN Dean for the past 6 years, I have personally witnessed the extraordinary mentoring Carol, as she prefers to be called, has provided both faculty, students, and staff from across all 3 schools. As evidenced by her CV, Carol has chaired over 40 dissertations, 21 of which she was the chair of, and then served the other 19 or so as a member of dissertations, including those outside of UMass at Brandeis and Boston College. These include learners from many culturally diverse backgrounds. She is a true scholar with a myriad of publications and presentations in the field of nursing, especially in HIV. She has held the position of director of the PhD program, and in this pivotal leadership position, she has co-created a supportive environment for learning by fostering mutual respect and demonstrating a sincere and active interest in her nursing learners and faculty members. She maintains an incredible leadership presence among the PhD students and faculty. She is passionate that our PhD learners are enculturated into the nursing profession as stewards of the discipline of nursing. As I have witnessed Dr. Carol Bova's leadership style, she is definitely what I would call an authentic, caring, and inclusive leader. And Carol has also decided to retire at the end of this coming December. So this is the last chance I have to bestow this very meaningful recognition. I could go on, but let me conclude, for it is my distinct pleasure and honor to present Dr. Carol Bova with the 2021 Dean's Award in this very unprecedented year. Congratulations, Dr. Carol Bova. The next distinguished, someone giving her an award, I can't see. All right, the next distinguished faculty award is for an outstanding pre-licensure educator, better known as our GEP program, who best exemplifies excellence in teaching in this program. This year, this award goes to Dr. Mary Fisher, who is one of our GEP faculty and also an alumni of the PhD program. This award is nominated by students, and Mary was the faculty to receive the most accolades. Here are how just some of her students described this outstanding educator. First one, Dr. Fisher always goes above and beyond for the GEP students. She always sets aside time to meet individually with students as well as hold after class open sessions. During her lectures, she is always mindful of the students' emotional and physical well-being and reminds us that self-care is essential during a stressful program like the GEP. She often practices mindfulness with the class and uses the power of positivity to keep us motivated. I would not be able to get through this rigorous program without her support and resources. She helps me remind myself that I'm learning and growing. Second student said, Dr. Fisher has gone above and beyond for her students. She is one of the most supportive faculty members there is. She constantly reminds students to practice self-care. Self-care is a thing, Mary, while they are undergoing stressful situations, which is often. She wears many hats when it comes to the GEP program, and she has played an integral role in our growth as GEP students. I remember before our first Med-Surg exam, she did a mindfulness exercise with my lab group. She made us write our biggest fears on a piece of paper, fold it up, put it in a hat, and another student picked it out of the hat. While we held to this piece of paper that had someone else's biggest fear written on it, she guided us through the mindfulness exercise. This day has had a lasting effect on me. I learned that I am not alone in this program and that my classmates and faculty were there to support me every step of the way here at UMass. She taught us that it is okay to feel vulnerable and it's okay to feel nervous. She has also taught us to not let those emotions take control of ourselves. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Mary Fisher as the outstanding GEP faculty member. The next distinguished faculty award is a very well-known educator to many throughout all three schools. I apologize, my landscaper has arrived. She received the most nominations in the Doctoral of Nursing Practice program, who best exemplifies excellence in teaching. When I share all of the accolades bestowed on her by our learners, you will understand why she has received this very meaningful recognition. This is what her learners had to say about her. This is Dr. Jill Terrian. Dr. Jill Terrian is working on the front lines to vaccinate the community of Worcester, all while being there for her students and helping them to learn. She has gone above and beyond this year and should be recognized. Dr. Terrian is such a role model for GSN students, said another student. She is incredible in her role as an educator, mentor, and NP. She is an incredibly responsive and supportive and constantly lifts students up. She exudes positivity and has been one of the GSN students' biggest cheerleaders. I have thoroughly enjoyed the class Dr. Hale and her teach together, and have also enjoyed working with her on our IPEG grant. Her lab demonstrations are the best, and I really appreciate how she incorporates her real-world knowledge and expertise. Just such a warm and wonderful person who really looks out for her students. Now, the students said Jill goes above and beyond for her students, and she's also doing a wonderful job planning and implementing IM injections to medical students to increase the number of volunteers available to give COVID-19 vaccines during the pandemic. Another one said, Jill is simply the best. She is so genuine, and you can tell upon first meeting her how much she cares about the students. She is always checking in on us, making sure we are grasping material, that we are not overwhelmed, and that what we are discussing is relevant to our lives and future practice. I feel so lucky to have met her and to learn from her with each of our interactions. I want to be like Jill Terrian when I grow up. I think that's one of the biggest compliments. Lastly, Jill's commitment to her students, the GSN, and our local community is unparalleled. She has committed countless hours to leading our community service learning project aimed at training as many students and other community members in intramuscular injection technique. As a result, she and the students she is working with are making profound impact on fighting COVID-19. For example, she has coordinated the training of hundreds, yes, hundreds, of UMass medical students to become vaccinators, such that they can volunteer at mass vaccination sites in our community. Her work has not gone unnoticed and even led to an interscholastic coordination with Boston University, where Jill led a group of GSN students in training BU medical, dental, and PA students to become vaccinators as well. Finally, Jill is an advocate through and through for both her students' education and well-being. Her smile, laugh, and charisma make her one of the most approachable faculty members at UMass, while her experience and intellect make her an extraordinary teacher and mentor for all students. Please join me in recognizing Dr. Jill Terrian as the VP Outstanding Faculty Member. Jill, you had 7 nominations. I have never in my career seen 7 nominations for this award. The last Distinguished Faculty Award is for an outstanding PhD educator who best exemplifies education, excellence in teaching. This year, another member of our faculty has received this award before. She is none other than Dr. Donna Perry. This is what her learners had to say about her. Dr. Donna Perry is an incredible asset to the UMass GSN PhD program. I have the pleasure to work under her as an advisee and have been a student in 2 of her courses now. As an advisor and a professor, she makes herself available for all students as much as necessary. I look to her as a role model for her work as a nurse scientist and scholar carrying NIH funding, publishing, continuing her program of research in the midst of her busy teaching schedule, while also maintaining her other roles within the GSN. It is a privilege to learn under someone who is so knowledgeable about philosophy and nursing theory, and to experience the creativity she brings to these topics through the framework of her scholarly interest and work. Dr. Perry can be described as humble and authentic. She is a nurse theorist, cited in leading nursing theory textbooks, but seeks no special recognition. She is passionate about her research foci on the intersection of humans, nature, and health, and she is genuinely committed to the success of each student and their individual needs. I am proud to nominate Dr. Donna Perry for the GSN Education Award. Now, the student said, Donna is not only a kind-hearted, down-to-earth, encouraging human being, she is spiritual. motivating, and always generous with herself as she guides us along our doctoral journey. We have been encouraged every Tuesday to stretch ourselves by considering that which may not have been previously considered. Her willingness to take a phone call or meet via Zoom to discuss a plan for a paper, dissertation ideas, and ways to better our writing has been greatly appreciated. Lastly, I would say that Donna is incredibly humble. I would agree with that. I have observed the great respect and admiration she has for her mentors when they speak to our class. However, what is most evident is that her mentors have mutual respect and admiration for Donna. Why wouldn't they? Donna epitomizes what it means to be a nurse. She is a nurse scientist, theorist, nurse practitioner, nurse educator, and especially an advocate for a better world. I am not sure that she realizes that she is to her students exactly what her mentors have been to her. We are all fortunate to have Donna Perry participating in our transformational journey. Another student said, as a first-year PhD student, I was anxious and nervous starting class in the midst of COVID-19. I have completed one class with Donna and am currently enrolled in my second class. My anxiety level and nervousness lessened after taking one class because Donna's encouragement and guidance made me feel that someone really cares about a student's success. I feel that Donna is genuine and sincere with teaching, and I can see the passion she has while doing so, which is so inspiring. I know I have not had much faculty exposure, but I know Donna has left a lasting impression during my studies. And lastly, this is one of the best ones. Donna is a supportive and understanding faculty member. She is patient and really listens. Somehow she's able to guide you through the process of taking an idea and expanding upon it so that you are able to critically appraise and reflect on a concept or theory and apply it to practical situations relevant to nursing practice or to society at large. She remains open to our ideas and clearly vested in helping us achieve success in scholarly writing, while give us enough freedom to be true to ourselves in what is consistent with our professional goals. Donna has taught 2 of my PhD courses so far, and although they were courses I was not looking forward to and did not necessarily agree were important to my pursuit of a PhD, she has completely changed my mind. I see the value in being reflective and understanding the philosophical underpinnings of the discipline of nursing. I recognize the importance of linking theory and practice and have a central unifying focus, Donna. My thinking has definitely shifted because of Donna. Donna did not preach to us. Rather, she fostered discussion that allowed our cohort to discover it. We will be better stewards of the discipline and better professors ourselves in the future because of Donna's patience, understanding, and quiet fostering of ideas. Her gift of using presence, listening, and expert reflective guidance to help us transform our rough ideas into scholarly works is of great value to the GSN. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Donna Perry as the outstanding PhD faculty member. Congratulations. Thank you all.
All right, I'd now like to recognize GSBS faculty for their outstanding contributions. The first award recognizes outstanding contributions to graduate education. So this is the Dean's Award. And this year we recognize Dr. Craig Peterson. If you would please come forward when you hear your name. Dr. Peterson is an outstanding scientist and mentor, educator, leader, and snappy dresser. Since joining the University of Massachusetts Medical School in 1992, Craig has trained 16 PhD students and 16 postdoctoral associates, many who have risen to national and international prominence in their field. His trainees describe him as a supportive mentor who inspires them to strive for excellence. As an educator, Craig has distinguished himself in the reorganization and revitalization of the very popular eukaryotic gene expression class. He sets a strong example as a leader for active learning and learner engagement. And finally, as a leader, Craig has really been a contributor from the very beginning. He's spent a lot of time as the program director of the Interdisciplinary Graduate Program, which is our biggest BBS umbrella program. And he's been a member and leader of GSBS Assembly for decades. Forever. And I want to particularly point out his outstanding contribution to our admission and recruitment effort this year. We are undergoing a transformation in that arena as part of increasing our enrollment and increasing our the quality of the classes that we bring in. This has required a lot of change in practices, and it's been really fantastic to have a faculty partner in bringing about that change. So let's recognize Craig. So our next two awardees, I believe, are participating virtually. We would like to recognize faculty who have made outstanding contributions to curriculum development. We recognize Dr. Alper Kucherol and Dr. Kathy Dubé. Okay, there's Alper. Let's start with Dr. Kucherol. He is an associate professor in the program in molecular medicine. He has created and led the RNA-seq boot camp, which is an excellent example of co-curricular learning. He shared his experience with students, postdocs, and faculty from a variety of scientific backgrounds and experience level. And this diverse group of learners expressed great appreciation for Dr. Kucherol's patience and dedication. Thank you very much. And we also recognize for this award Dr. Kathy Dubé, who is also participating virtually. Well, we will recognize her for her quick and effective feedback-driven action in revamping a research ethics course and for leading her colleagues in the development of an outstanding learning environment during the transition to remote instruction. Will Dr. Sam Behar please come forward? So Dr. Behar is the recipient for the Outstanding Research Mentoring and Commitment to Student Professional Advancement Award. Dr. Behar is a professor in microbiology and physiological systems. His trainees describe him as kind, understanding, patient, and inspiring. He challenges his students without pressuring them, and he brings out their best. He is generous with his time and his encouragement, and he invests in his students' professional growth and development. All of my conversations with Sam over the past years have been about his trainees and about the special role that he plays in their development as scientists and as people. And I finally want to recognize members of our postdoctoral community. Postdocs have a special place in a research institution, but it's a place that is often not fully recognized. They are neither students nor faculty, and they don't belong to the institution in the same way that those two groups do. However, postdocs make enormous contributions to the training environment of our students and to the development of our faculty. They're not required to do this professionally, and so the contributions to education are very much personal decisions that individuals make in this arena. So it is with great pleasure that I recognize two of our postdoctoral scholars for their contributions to trainee mentoring and professional advancement. Would Dr. Priya Devaranjan and Chris Algaubitz please come forward? So Dr. Devaranjan was recently promoted to instructor in the pathology department, but she was nominated by graduate students in that department for the contributions that she made during her postdoctoral years. She's been described as a crucial force in driving graduate student projects and scientific development. She's always helpful when someone is struggling, and she thinks about trainees' long-term goals to help them develop the skills they need to obtain these goals. Dr. Gaubitz is a postdoctoral associate in biochemistry and molecular pharmacology. She pioneered the use of cryo-EM here at our institution, and she started a cryo-EM club, which brings together labs across the institution. She provides technical guidance and has been stellar during the pandemic. She dedicates her time and effort to train students and fellow postdocs, and she's an active member of the BMP Diversity Action Community. She never fails to offer help with great patience, support, and guidance in all areas. All right, and our final award, I believe, yes, our final award recognizes a faculty who's made an outstanding contributions in the lecture and classroom setting. The lecture and classroom setting probably being a room at her house over a computer screen. Would Mary Munson please come forward? And while Mary is coming forward, and I'm going to tell you about her contributions to education, I would also like to just say a few words about another area where Mary is making a contribution that I am confident will be very impactful in the future. Of Mary's own initiative, she began a faculty working group called Faculty Fostering Inclusive Excellence that is taking a multifaceted approach to promoting and enhancing institutional diversity at every level. I believe that I will be standing up here at the podium in the future talking about the impact of that group. Today, I want to recognize the fact that Mary's students in her classroom, in the first year class, in the foundations class, and in the biochemistry class, pointed out that in the midst of all this Zoom fatigue, Mary had a way of energizing and engaging students and leading an active discussion. This has always been a strength and talent of Mary's in the days of live classroom, and she has effectively translated those skills to the virtual environment. With that, I would like to call Dr. Ann Larkin to the lectern.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lane. It really, truly is a pleasure to be standing before you today without a mask on and being able to see all of you face to face for what I didn't realize was going to be our first face-to-face awards ceremony again, but it really is auspicious. It is my really great honor and privilege to provide an introduction for our student presenters today. When I get up to do these things to introduce our students, I always reflect on what it is that I'm going to say, and I thought of a couple of highlights that I really want to bring forward for everyone today, because they really epitomize our institution. Our students' investment in their own education service on curriculum committees, curriculum revolution service, peer mentoring, accreditation working groups, accreditation task forces, focus groups, really all aspects of what we do every day. Our students are there with us, hand in hand, every step. In addition, our students have a unique and immensely valuable relationship with their faculty. This is through their learning communities, through their courses, through their clerkships, again, hand in hand with all that we do every day. So with that, I don't believe that Emily and Jason really need any introduction to anyone today. We all know them as incredibly talented co-presidents of our student body committee. They have really helped our students and our faculty navigate through a large part of this pandemic and many, many other challenges that have faced our nation and our community. And for me personally, they have served as immense resources and support over these last many months that they've been the co-presidents. For that, I'm very grateful. With that, join me in welcoming Emily Chin and Jason Friedman to the podium.
Hello, everyone. I feel like we just won an award with that very kind introduction. We didn't win anything. We're just, we get to go to UMass Med School. That's our award. So thank you for that. So I will just start by introducing the award that we are presenting, which is an award for outstanding medical education. And this award is voted on by the second year class. We're actually about to become third years, so look out for us in the hospital. And the students are asked to reflect on the faculty who had a really strong impact on their preclinical education. So without further ado, I will cede the floor to Emily to introduce our first winner.
All right, hello everyone. First, I just want to say what a privilege and honor it is to present this award. The first person I will call is Dr. Howard Sachs. Can you please come up? Any student who has had the privilege of taking Dr. Sachs' 12 Days in March course knows that he needs no introduction. For those of you who do not know, 12 Days in March is a 2-week prep course for second-year medical students who are about to take step 1. And as you can imagine, for the class of 2023, who will be the last class in the history of UMass to take step 1 for a grade, glad that's behind us now, we were under a tremendous amount of pressure in March. And during this time, Dr. Sachs, in the short period that we got to know him, has just given us the confidence and the support and care that we all needed in a very dark month. And in the short period of time that we spent with Dr. Sachs, he has left us with some lifelong lessons, whether it was his magical talent to teach complex medical topics in very simple ways. He gave us the confidence that we were able to do this and that we had the power all along. And it was that one line in so many of his slides in this 2-week course that had kept me through and given me hope when I was studying for step 1. It was, you had the power all along, and it was so simple but so needed. And I just want to read some quotes from my classmates. Dr. Sachs, you gave us a pep talk at the last day of the 12 Days in March course. My colleague says, Dr. Sachs giving us the extremely well-timed and necessary pep talk right now. He's tearing up. His voice is shaking. Someone cares about us. So many tears right now, emotional from Dr. Sachs, sad for the end of the course, or stress from STEP, who knows? That man deserves a gift basket. And the last quote that Jason says here, would run through a wall for that man. And I believe it. Dr. Sachs, you deserve this award so much, and congratulations.
I would now like to call Dr. Reed Pukila-Worley and Dr. Chris Cicetti both up. So I will take you back approximately a year ago to the start of a pandemic. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. And while we've all had a year to learn how to do incredible hybrid presentations and we've learned how to wear our masks, there was a class that had to be the very first to go to virtual learning for the class of 2023. That class happened to be our course in infectious disease. The irony was not lost on us. And while it would have been understandable if the course directors struggled in that context, they flourished. And it was not just because they are incredible scientists and experts in their field and very engaging lectures to boot. It is instead because they cared for their students. They took the time and the energy to show up to every virtual lecture, even when they weren't presenting. They checked in with their students. How's everyone doing? They made jokes to make us feel connected to them and to keep the attitude positive. And they were really innovative with how they used the virtual format. I still remember when Reed was monitoring the chat and there were students asking questions and then other students answering them, and he unmuted and he was like, "This is incredible. The students are teaching themselves. I don't even know why we're still here." And that kind of open-mindedness and care for their students and just teaching excellence is why I'm not surprised at all that the infections course is a perennial favorite of all the med students. And it was why I was not surprised at all to see that our class had nominated both of you for recipients of this award. So it is our distinct pleasure to award you both as co-winners, fitting for your co-director title of this esteemed award. We'd now like to ask Doctors Aaron McMaster and Patricia Seymour to come to the podium.
Thanks, Jason and Emily. That's a tough act to follow. But good afternoon, everyone. It is our pleasure to present the Educational Achievement Awards, or we call our STAR Awards, which are given in recognition of excellence for a specific curricular development or an innovation. And so the first of these awards we're giving to our Anatomy Dissection Bootcamp team, Layla Gianaris, Alexandra Wink, and Amanda Collins, if you all want to come forward. Due to the pandemic, the hands-on cadaveric dissection experience in the DSF course was halted after a month and pivoted to virtual labs. To provide interested students an opportunity for cadaveric dissection, the anatomy team developed optional anatomy boot camp weeks. During the boot camp, teams carried out dissections through the neck, thorax, abdomen, and pelvis, plus an optional brain removal, working independently with general faculty guidance and support. And on the last day, teams chose their own dissection adventure. The boot camp was highly rated and such a wonderful curricular addition for our students. So congratulations to Layla, Alexandra, and Amanda.
So you've already heard from Dr. McMaster what our educational achievement or STAR awards are all about, specific additional efforts and successes. I'd like to call Susan Hogan as our second recipient for STAR Award today. And I'll jump right into talking about Susan here. So Dr. Hogan is involved in improving so many aspects of our current curriculum and working on our future curriculum that it feels a little strange to only recognize one of her efforts here. But nonetheless, she's being recognized for her work around organizing and making sense of the electives curriculum here at UMass. Before she stepped into this role of chair for the newly formed electives curriculum committee, our electives program, which admittedly is the largest part of our fourth-year student experience, lacked some consistency and oversight, but she was able to engage representation from departments across the board to form an oversight committee. She standardized the assessment modalities for our learners and created feedback mechanisms for the electives themselves. So I'd like to recognize Susan for this Herculean and very successful effort redeveloping the advanced studies electives curriculum.
All right, so our next award is the Resident Fellow Award for Excellence in Medical Student Education. And this award will recognize a resident who's especially motivated and inspired to teach students, a resident who serves as a mentor and a powerful role model for students, or a resident who improves the educational content of student rotations and clerkships. And our first winner, who's from the university campus, really exemplifies all of those, Dr. Kristen Richard, who I believe is on Zoom. Or not. Oh, there she is. Yay. So Kristen is currently the chief resident in pediatrics and has been engaged medical student educator since her intern year. She actually came to me and said, as an intern, what can I do to teach? How can I get more involved? And since that time, she's been teaching case conferences, she's been precepting student OSCE exams, she's been involved in curricular development. And then in her clinical role, she has been an ideal role model for students, and they truly emulate all of her characteristics. I can't think of anyone more worthy. Congratulations, Kristen. And we also have an awardee from our Bay State campus. And our awardee is also on Zoom, Dr. Mohammed Abazana. There he is. So also known as Hamdi, he's been recognized on numerous occasions by the third-year Perch students as an excellent medicine ward senior resident and a great teacher. Hamdi's gone above and beyond for the third-year Perch students this year by being the director of the third-year EKG curriculum. He revitalized the previous curriculum into 5 EKG training sessions, and the students truly valued his work. Congratulations, Hamdi.
So the next award for us to present is the Patient as Teacher Award, and I do not believe our recipient is able to join us through either mechanism, but I'd like to present this award to Betty Anderson Frederick. This recipient is currently a standardized patient, a retired nurse, a community leader, and a non-physician community faculty member as part of the Perch program, and she's become really integral at Perch. She actively contributes to designing and informing learning sessions for students. She's invested in how Perch students learn about and reflect on social determinants of health as well as healthcare inequities. So please join me in congratulating Betty Anderson Frederick as the Patient as Teacher Award winner.
The next award is the Retired Faculty Teaching Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Medical Education. And it's to recognize the ongoing contributions of, quote, retired, as we all know that goes, basic science and clinical faculty to the education of our undergraduates. And this year's winner is Susan Tarrant. Susan has been teaching in the DCS and the former PPS course for more than 2 decades. And during that time, she's offered savvy, highly targeted advice to students about their interviewing skills. One of her former students summed up her contributions to that course. Susan always brought the important patient perspective into our discussions. Her anecdotes and experience working with patients often reminded me of why I wanted to be a doctor in the first place, to help people feel better. She reminded us it's not always about what you say, but how you say it that can make all the difference. And as one of her former PPS students, I could not agree more. Congratulations, Susan.
Okay, and the final award we'll be presenting is the Administrative Staff Award. The recipient this year is just very, very deserving of this award. Justin Ayala, unfortunately, could not be with us, again, through either mechanism, but he's such an integral member of the Perch curriculum team. His nominator pointed out that his outstanding knowledge, skills, and attitude are undoubtedly a key feature to the success of the Perch track. In my limited interaction with Justin this year, I immediately noticed how he sees the possibilities and challenges from the perspectives of everyone in the room almost intuitively. He's a strong student advocate, and comments come from the students year after year reflecting that in the Perch feedback. He not only coordinates all of the student and faculty Perch elements, but he also oversees the community faculty and standardized patient programs. So please join me in congratulating Justin, who could not be here because there's a concomitant Perch event tonight. So congratulations, Justin. So we'll now turn over the podium to Dean Flott.
Great. Thank you all for being here, and I really mean that. It's wonderful to have so many people here. In my role as the 8th Dean of the University of Massachusetts School of Medicine, it is now my honor to present the Dean's Award, which is named for our first Dean, Dr. Lamar Suter. This award was established to recognize medical school faculty who have an established track record of excellence and by their performance have made an indelible mark on both UMass and American medical student education. So I am going to now invite forward Dr. Trudy Morrison to receive this award. Trudy, please join us up here. So, as I said, Dr. Morrison is the recipient of this year's award. She has been a professor in the Department of Microbiology and Physiologic Systems for the last 47 years. In that time, she has established her reputation as a leader in medical education, both on our campus and as an influential voice nationally. She's an internationally recognized virologist and member of the American Academy of Microbiology, disciplines that we've come to appreciate even more during this last pandemic year. She is widely recognized as an authority in her field. She's made ongoing contributions over the 47 years to the teaching of thousands of UMass medical students, again, both formally in teaching in our curriculum and as a designer of our current LINC curriculum in the School of Medicine. In addition to these contributions, Dr. Morrison has ensured the rigor of medical education by serving on the National Board of Medical Examiners. Trudy is clearly very worthy of this award, and it recognizes really a lifelong series of achievements and contributions to medical education. So congratulations, Trudy. Dr. Morrison was just sharing that she remembers Lamar Suter, so I think Alan taught Lamar Suter in high school, though. So I'm now going to invite up Dr. Janet Hale for the last award.
I'd like to invite Timothy Wynn up to the front, please. It's my honor to present Tim with the Humanism in Healthcare Scholarship Award that goes to a student or faculty member who is an exemplar and advocate of compassionate patient care, demonstrating the essence of humanism through intention, action, and eloquent reflection. When Tim came to UMass School of Medicine, he was assigned to my DCS1 group. He brought to that group his experiences, his wisdom, and his humanity as a neonatal ICU nurse. At the 2019 MedMoth, Tim shared a reflection titled, "The Path of the Wounded Healer," documenting how he turned his personal wounds into the wisdom and compassion that inform his nursing and now his medical care. Putting oneself into the shoes of someone whose behavior might be offensive or even reprehensible, behavior we are confronted with inevitably and regularly, and responding not with judgment and admonishment, but with understanding and compassion. I quote a valuable piece of his wisdom. "We understand that our wounds may educate us on how to approach another's because we are wounded too. We understand that our wounds may allow the vulnerable we care for to trust us because we are wounded too. We understand that another's fallibility may remind us that we are all fallible because we are wounded too. We understand that our fallibility does not disqualify us from the kindness and compassion of another because we are wounded too." Tim personifies the gold standard of empathy, the best in humanity, human fortitude, and generosity of soul. I'm honored and humbled to be able to present this award to him. I'd like to invite Chancellor Collins back to the podium.
Well, congratulations to all of you who've been recognized this afternoon. It's now my pleasure to transition to this year's last lecture, a celebration recognizing the art of teaching and those in our faculty ranks who have distinguished themselves as master teachers and esteemed educators. The 2021 last lecture will be delivered by Dr. Mai-Lan Rogoff, Professor Emeritus of Psychiatry, who honestly has waited patiently for over a year to have this opportunity to teach us. By way of introducing Dr. Rogoff, I'd like to ask you now to turn your attention to the screen. Master teacher, pillar of education, one who empowers students to become compassionate learners, revered and appreciated, kind but direct, gentle and truthful, a touchstone and shepherd, warm, filled with humor and inspiring of confidence. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this year's recipient of the Chancellor's Medal for Distinguished Teaching, Mai-Lan Rogoff. Congratulations. Thank you. For the more than 35 years you've taught at our medical school, you've been an educator who has influenced the careers of thousands of medical students. With your pedagogical expertise, you've helped to create numerous courses. You've impacted multiple curricular innovation efforts, and you've strived to help your learners appreciate the importance of maintaining their humanity and compassion while dealing with the challenges of their medical education. Please accept my congratulations as the 2019 recipient of the Chancellor's Medal for Distinguished Teaching. Dr. Rogoff is joined today by Hendrik Brookman, her husband, and their sons, Anton and Nathaniel, and we welcome all of you to our medical school for this afternoon's lecture. Dr. Rogoff, please accept my congratulations on being previously recognized as the 2019 recipient of the Chancellor's Medal for Distinguished Teaching and the 2020 winner of the Manning Prize for Excellence in Teaching. I know this has been a long time in coming, but we're finally ready to be your learners. Dr. Mai-Lan Rogoff.
Thank you very much for that really warm introduction. I can't tell you what a privilege it is to be standing here in front of people live, although it is a little interesting that I'm only seeing half of your faces, but it's sort of like being in a surgery conference. But in any case, thank you for showing up. Thank you for you people in TV land. So jazz. What can I say to you about jazz? So how is jazz related to giving a last lecture? Well, jazz is an improvisational style. It's in music. In other words, there's a line, and you're expected to do increasingly inventive variations on that line. Now, you're in an ensemble, and the ensemble is throwing things out too. Some of them, they might throw out an unexpected line, and you're expected to, vary, riff on the line. Accidents happen. Someone may throw out a wrong note. You may throw out a wrong note. Some of the most interesting chords I ever heard were by somebody who turned out to have his fingers stuck together because he had poison ivy. So you never know what's going to happen. And improv, which is, it's an art form in many music styles, and it's also an art form in theater, in comedy. I mean, whose line is it anyway, right? But all of that is the art of responding to the unexpected. And what I'd like to propose to you is that teaching is also, there's a lot of jazz in teaching. There's a lot of jazz in immediate teaching. So if you're teaching a discussion group, you have an ensemble, various lines are going to come out. You're going to riff on the lines. There is a structure. I mean, there's always a structure in jazz, in music. In the kind of music I play, actually, is Baroque music and Renaissance music. A lot of people don't realize there's a lot of improv in that, too. So there is a structure. But students will say things. You want to respond to it in a useful way. And I also think that actually there's jazz in the bigger concept of curriculum design, because you're trying to think of innovative ways to keep engaging people and yourself in what you're doing, in how you're bringing things across, and you're responding to what other people are saying, to what your learners are saying. That really works, or oh my goodness, that does not work. So there's jazz in overall teaching, and in fact there's jazz in life, because things happen in life, they're unpredictable, and we have to respond to them. The biggest example of that most recently is the pandemic, right? Where there's, who saw that coming? And obviously there was pain and loss and sorrow in the pandemic itself, but for those of us who did teaching in the classroom, all 3 schools went to virtual in a week. And the students have recognized the incredible skill of the faculty in responding to that unexpected development, which is jazz, which is responding, in jazz. And now, interestingly, we're doing the opposite. We're looking at, because initially when this happened, we all went, oh my gosh, how are we going to survive this? Now we're saying, hey, stuff happened that was really good and it was really useful. And what are we going to maintain out of that? And there's a whole movement now of looking at, what should we keep now that we don't have to do that anymore? And I can tell you that one of the things the students would like to keep is what we're doing right now. to have this mixed, the ability to be here live and other people to be on Zoom. Unfortunately, I don't know whether they'll be able to have the fantastic, professional backing that we have, but they'd like to try it. And in fact, there was a study recently of, I think, 1,700 professors in almost 1,000 institutions across the US, in which they were asked, are you going to return to what you did before the pandemic? And only 8% said that they would return to what they were doing before. So the ability to respond to the jazz of what happens, I think, is part of teaching, of education. So one of the questions is, how are you going to put together a last lecture, right? You get invited to do this thing. I'm the 10th of these people, and I spoke to some of the people who came before me, and I asked one of them, when did you start to panic about this? And she said, the night that I won the medal. And I would say that that's accurate. Just about everybody has mentioned Randy Pausch, who gave one of the most famous last lectures, I think, ever. The whole last lecture exercise is something which is done in multiple institutions. And the idea is, if you only had one lecture to give, and that's why it's such an incredible privilege, you can talk about anything. What's the message that you would want to give? And after agreeing to give it at Carnegie Mellon, he discovered that he was dying, and it really would be one of his last lectures. And he gave it as a message to his children on how to achieve your childhood dreams. You can watch it on YouTube. It's been downloaded, I think, 10 million times. Or at least watched 10 million times. It's been given to it's a book. He dropped and gave some push-ups during that lecture. That is not happening here, I just want you to know. Another way of putting it together is completely different, was by a former professor of pathology here named Guido Mino. Does anybody remember him? So yeah, you have to be a certain age here, I think, to remember him. He was very much beloved professor of pathology. And one of the things, in fact, that he used to do is when someone he'd ask questions during the class, and if someone gave the right answer, he would lob a bar of chocolate at them. And we're not talking Hershey's Kisses. He was lobbing Lindt bars at them. But he developed severe Parkinson's, and he kept saying he was going to retire, and then he wouldn't. And students, I was the dean of students at that point, and the students kept coming to me to, how can I manage to take his class before he retires? But one year, he called me up and he said, I'm inviting you to my last lecture. So I went to the lecture, and what it was is he said to the students, I'm offering you the gift of time, and I hope you'll take this time to reflect on what's really important to you instead of reviewing pathology slides. And he introduced a friend of his who proceeded to give a 45-minute classical guitar concert. And when that happened, I knew he really was going to retire. So that would be another way to put it together. So how did I put it together? Well, I'm a child psychiatrist. And psychiatrists view the world as things that you've experienced, the jazz of your life gets wound into what happens as you move on. In other words, you are the narrative hero of your own novel. And so what I'd like to do, one of the most famous pieces of jazz ever is by Dave Brubeck. It's called Take 5. And what I'd like to do is riff off of that and give you 5 episodes out of my own life and reflect with you on how they might have influenced my approach to teaching. So the first one has to do with my life on television. I was a child star on this program called Juvenile Jury. The tagline of Juvenile Jury was, "Out of the mouths of babes." And the way this is, it was on NBC, coast to coast, national TV. And this is an article in TV Guide, which I think sums up pretty well the premise of the show, which was you get some kids and you confront the Muppets with the problems of other children, then let their whimsical little minds take wing. No scripts, no rehearsal. In other words, this is pure jazz, pure improv. The way I got on it was that my parents, I don't know how they got me onto this, but I was there as a contestant initially when I was 4. And I managed to put my foot in my mouth enough that they thought I should be on the jury. And so that is how I managed to get on the jury. Our job on the jury was to ask the people, the kids there, probing questions, try to understand their problems, give them advice, and help them along in their path in life. And this was not quiz kids, by the way. We were not there being brilliant. We were there being unintentionally funny. And so here's some examples from an article in the Post about how I gave out advice. Because when I give advice, I was 5, remember. I make out I'm not too anxious for anybody to follow that advice, and then they'll want to do what I tell them. So I want you to know that this is a technique. It's taught in motivational interviewing. It's called reinforcing autonomy. And you heard it here, I invented it. And then I sometimes gave out flat out advice. It says, I tell everybody what to do. I give advice to everybody. So the show was training for psychiatry, and it was training to be an associate dean for student affairs. This is what the set actually looked like. And the thing was, from my point of view, I was really trying to help these kids. I mean, I was genuinely asking them probing questions and trying, they had real problems. My mother makes me go to bed too early. My mom won't let me kiss the dog. These are real issues to kids. And what would happen, of course, the audience would laugh. Because we were cute, or because we said things like, well, there are things that you do in bed and things that you don't do in bed. So, and I didn't understand why they were laughing, so I didn't laugh when they laughed. And the upshot of that is that the critics called me almost as good a deadpan comic as Buster Keaton. And then here's another one about my wonderful deadpanning ability. It says, Mai-Lan's deadpan double talk accounts for much of the show's comedy. Fortunately, I hope the students don't think of me as deadpan double talk, but who knows. And we were sponsored over the years by various ad people, various sponsors. We were being sponsored at this point by Geritol, which is a tonic for old people, these little kids, right? We were being sponsored by Scotch Tape at this point. So that's me in a newspaper ad for Scotch Tape. Notice that how Caucasian my features have gotten. In fact, I think I have blue eyes, I'm not sure. But the story I want to tell you about happened when we were being sponsored by Gaines Dog Food. And what they would do, because ads were integrated into shows in those days, so they would bring a couple of dogs out, and we were supposed to identify the breed and then what was the dog originally used for. Now, most of the time when we talked, people would laugh, but every now and then, something would happen that would cause the audience to applaud. And I was very intrigued by that. How could I get them to applaud instead of laughing? So in front of me every week sat this little girl, Laura. And Laura had blonde hair and ringlets. I had straight dark hair. I was insanely jealous of those ringlets. And Laura also was very good at kind of knowing where the camera was, putting herself forward. She just knew how to do it. So one week they bring the dogs out, and we've identified the breed. They say, what are they originally used for? There's a dead silence. Laura raises her hand and she goes, I think those dogs were made to eat Gaines dog food. Well, the producer goes like this. The audience applauds. Mai-Lan goes. So the following week, they bring the dogs out, and we get the breed, and Jack Berry says, and what do you think these dogs were used for? My hand shoots up. Unfortunately for me, my favorite show in the world was sponsored by Kennel Ration. And in one of those slips of the tongue that you remember forever, I plugged the wrong sponsor on coast-to-coast network TV before the days of the 3-second or 10-second pause. So it went straight out. The instant I said it, I realized what I'd done, but it was too late. I have never, ever gotten a bigger laugh in my life. Jack Barry put his head down on the desk. Dan Enright, the producer, went like that and walked off the stage. The real miracle is that I was still there the following week. So what did I learn from that episode and from the whole juvenile jury episode? I think one thing was it's not worth imitating somebody else. It's better just be yourself. Or if you're going to imitate someone, at least get it right. But the other thing of the bigger juvenile jury story was that, I didn't understand why people were laughing. I couldn't get involved in why are they always laughing. Just let them laugh. Be yourself. Do with what's really important to you. And let them laugh. You don't have to respond to everything. And I think that was a useful thing also as an educator. You want to respond to the feedback, but you don't want to hop and jump to every single little piece of feedback that you get because you're not going to please all the people all the time. That's just the reality of life. But I was a TV star. And the upshot of it is I was recognized on the street all the time, and I hated it. And I remember I proposed to my dad at one point that I go around with a paper bag on my head, and he said it was not on. So I really hated it. But at the same time, I was also a dancer. Part of the jazz of my life is that my parents, my mom was from Vietnam, my dad was from Brockton, Massachusetts. They met in Paris, France. And they used to take me to dance performances in New York, where I grew up. And I used to dance in the aisles. So they took me to dancing lessons, and by the time I was 5, I was actually performing as a dancer. Now, I would sometimes get recognized on the street as a dancer, and I loved that. And the question is, why? What's the difference? I performed on stage and, got reviewed the way everybody got reviewed. There's one in Dance Magazine and one in some paper. I got articles written up about me. So this is West End Magazine, I think. This is another one. This is not the current People magazine. This is People Today. They both mentioned juvenile jury, but at least they gave credit to the dancing. I was on TV as a dancer. This is CBS. Anybody know who that guy is? This guy? It's Walter Cronkite. More important to me than meeting Walter Cronkite at the time was meeting these two characters. Does anybody know who they are? Who are they? Kukla and Ollie, exactly. Now you have the students, I can't imagine, if you know this, you lived a previous life. But they were kind of the Sesame Street Muppets of their day. This was as if I was meeting Oscar the Grouch and Kermit the Frog, at the same time. So it was very exciting to me to be able to do that. Anyone know who this guy is? Props to anyone who can figure it out, because I don't know who it is either. And I ran it backwards through all the programs on the net and couldn't figure it out either. He was a television star at the time. This is at the UN, actually, doing a performance for Averell Harriman, who's the governor of New York, and Henry Cabot Lodge Jr., who was the ambassador to the UN at the time. So what did I learn? Why did I love being recognized as a dancer and not for juvenile jury? Anybody have any bright ideas why that would be? Well, I take it as because being a dancer was a skill. It was something I worked very hard at. And it was, there's a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who was one of the inventors of, or one of the discoverers, or first describers of positive psychology. And he talks about something called finding flow. And being in the flow state is something which I think the students are recognizing, that the professors who are able to bring them to this stage, is it's not so easy that it's boring. But it's not so difficult that you think there's no way I can ever do this either. And it's in that intermediate part where you're stretching yourself and you're mastering something and it feels challenging but doable. that you really get something out of it. That's how I felt about dancing, and I think that's what I try to do in terms of teaching also, is how do we present things in such a way that it's challenging, it's interesting, and it's not hopeless. So I think that's kind of what I got out of the dancing episode. Now, part of what dancing got me to is the third story, which is Broadway. When I was a teenager, I auditioned and got into a Broadway show that you have probably never heard of called Christine. The book was by Pearl Buck, who's a Nobel Prize winner. The music was by Sammy Fain and Paul Webster, who had won Academy Awards. The choreography was by Hanya Holm, who was a famous choreographer. And the star was Maureen O'Hara. And this was her debut. And she was a well-known movie star at the time, and this was her Broadway debut doing a musical. So this is me, on stage with her. We got mentioned in Q magazine, was the New York guide to shows at the time, and I actually got mentioned as one of the reasons to go watch the show. This is the curtain call. That's me. You can see why it was wildly inappropriate that I got the mention in Q. I'm not sure why it happened. But you can also see that it's a big group of people. It's a big team. And the team is actually about, at least 3 times bigger, because they're all the musicians in the pit. There's a stage crew, there's sound and light, there's loads of other stuff going on here. The reason you've never heard of Christine is it flopped. With all that work and all this team and all the good stuff behind it, it lasted a month in pre-Broadway trials, and on Broadway it lasted exactly 10 days, 12 performances. Now there was an equity strike, and that contributed to the closure of the show. But about 200 people lost their jobs when the show folded. But what that taught me is you don't succeed at everything you do. No matter how good the team is, no matter how hard you work, no matter how good it looks on paper before you do it, success is not guaranteed. And you have to move on beyond that lack of success. And then how do you do it? How do you help other people do it? Which is another thing that I think we as educators also need to think about. Students vary in their ability to grab things, and we have to be able to help everybody. The people who grab it so fast that you think, oh my gosh, I'll never get to a flow state here because everything is just so easy. And other people for whom success is not guaranteed, and we have to be there for them too. So I continued, those 200 people continued, I continued on in theater as I was going through high school and college. This is children's theater. I kept dancing. And when I got to medical school, that was kind of the end of my dancing career. But the other career, the other arts career that I've continued up to the present day is one in music. So I started as a child playing the piano, as many kids do. I went on to play the cello. My family was musical. This is me playing quartets with my father, who played the viola. And then as I went on, when I was a resident, so in these shots, I'm actually a resident in adult psychiatry, and that's playing with my husband, music, that is. And by then I changed instruments. I was playing the viola da gamba. If you look carefully, you can see that instead of the 4 frets of the 4 pegs of the cello, there are 6 pegs because there are 6 strings. It has frets. Like a guitar has. This is one of the groups I play with, and everybody's holding there are different sizes of viola da gamba, so people are holding the different sizes, and of course one person is holding a lute, and this is what it sounds like. Now, you probably would not notice unless you were playing that kind of music yourself, but that on the repeat there were notes that weren't in there the first time around, and those notes were being improvised. And that's sort of the jazz, that's where jazz creeps into Renaissance music, sometimes in much more overt ways. And I can tell you from personal experience that improvising while you're performing is, it takes a certain amount of nerve. This is another instrument that I play. It's called the violone. It's kind of like a viola da gamba on steroids. It's actually the biggest member of the viola da gamba family. It probably was the forerunner of the double bass. And here's an example of what that sounds like. So here's another instrument that I play more recently. This is called the ukulele, or the ukulele more properly. And I'm sure probably, how many people here play the ukulele? Right. So we should get together and jam sometime. But it's been fun. It's absolutely been fun to play that too. So what did I learn from all this studying music, performing music, dealing with music? Well, music and dance, too, actually, are both skills which are learned through reflective learning. You're always thinking, how did I do it? Can I do it better? What went wrong? What can I do? And as you know, reflective learning is something that we are pushing much more in medical education. Even from the smallest things like after an exercise, the first thing you ask any student is, so how do you think it went? As opposed to jumping in right away and giving your own, how you think it went. That's promoting reflective learning. And the idea is to promote that whenever you do an interview, whenever you do a physical, whenever you do anything, one of the things you think about is how did I do it, how can I do it better, et cetera. Now, at its, when it becomes too much self-critical, you get this kind of picture, which reflects what often happens in performing, where from the audience point of view, it looks confident and beautiful and elegant, and from the performer's point of view, it looks a little more like that. And that's, yes, that reflects some truth. But I think trying to reflect, reflective learning is a big thing that we do try to push. And the other thing about music, many of you probably play. How many people play music here? Right, so many more than play the ukulele, actually. But as a student advisor, being a musician helped me model for students the idea that choosing to become a doctor doesn't mean sacrificing other interests. And I think that's another thing that I got from music, from mixing music and medicine. So before I get to my fifth and last story, if I look at the 4 stories or the 4 episodes so far, one thing that they all have in common in terms of what did they train me to be, they trained me to be an entertainer. They trained me to feel comfortable or relatively comfortable on the stage, how to read an audience, how to entertain, how to perform. And so before I get to the last story, one of the things I would like to do with you, if you're willing, is to do a little audience poll on the question of how important is entertainment in education. So that's how to participate. Please, and this is true for everybody who's watching on Zoom. You can participate too. In fact, please do, because otherwise there's a relatively small group of people here. It's a great group of people, but relative to who's out there in Zoom land, I think it's small. You text that to 22333. You will get something that's got a link in it. Do not click on the link. That will just take you to the company website. Okay, so are we there? All right, so here are your questions. This is a forced choice, three questions. So if you think about entertainment as the things we add to lectures that aren't immediately necessary for the lecture, photographs, videos, cartoons, animations, the things that we add to lectures, how important do you think they are? So you have 3 choices. A, students should be interested in the material because of the content, and there really is no need for entertainment. B, a little entertainment is okay, but there's currently too much emphasis on keeping students entertained. We're acting as if medical school is Sesame Street, and we're trying to put lots of music and movement and whatnot. There's too much emphasis on it. And the third one is that entertainment helps learning, as long as it obviously doesn't just detract from or displace the content. And we should put in as much entertainment as we can. So those are your three choices. Students should just be interested because of the content. There's no need for entertainment. A little entertainment is okay. There's too much of it, though. And entertainment, you can never have too much entertainment. So I'll give you 30 seconds to consult with your neighbor if you're close enough to talk to them and put in an answer. And it will, yeah, obviously it's showing, the answers are going to show up as they get put in. It looks like we already have agreement. So, well, how nice. So people like the idea of adding things to lectures so that it's not, that how do we keep lectures, or not just lectures, videos. And one of the big things I do is flipped classrooms, which means videos which are already planned, and then discussion groups that riff off the videos. But even in putting the videos, I do try to think about how can I keep them entertaining, even though there is no jazz in those videos at all. They're obviously pre-recorded. Okay, well, that's good to know. There are a few people here who think there's too much. Well, this brings me to my last story, which has to do with medicine. Obviously, I ended up in medical school. Things were a little bit different then. That's me. I have outlined all of the women in the class. You can see that the gender ratio was somewhat different at that time. This is from a lecture hall. Look at all the heads. A random picture of a lecture hall probably for us would not quite look like that. But the story I want to tell you about had to do with my clinical years. I did a sub-internship in obstetrics, which was one of the things I was thinking of going into. And it included a 1-month rotation on labor and delivery, in which I was on call every other night for a month. This was before the days of Libby Zion, which, if you don't know, is a case that changed the number of hours that people are allowed to work. So the way it worked then is you worked for 24 hours, and then you stayed and continued to do clinical work for the next day. So you were basically there and on and up for somewhere between 32 and 36 hours. Then you had 12 to 16 hours off, and then you went and repeated the operation. Some people say the surgeons still do that. Is that not true? No. So by the end of the month, I was getting pretty tired, as you can imagine. And as you can see, I had very long hair then, and it was a city hospital. We were short of nurses. The medical students had to do their own monitoring. It took about 5 minutes to monitor a patient, and then you had to monitor them every 15 minutes. So the result is, if you had 2 patients in labor, you were up all night. That was it. But if you only had 1 patient, and that was what happened the night that this happened, I only had 1 patient. And so I had this very long hair, and I would wear it down and loose like that when I had to put on a fetoscope. This was in the days when you actually had to put on that sort of metal fetoscope on your head. And then I would tie it up in this kind of Vietnamese bun when I had to go into the OR. And we wore these kind of long, nondescript white robes. So I, only 1 patient, and I thought, I have a very good internal clock, and I have 10 minutes before I have to monitor her again. So I'll take a really quick 10-minute nap. I mean, I'm really good my clock is good. But I thought, rather than take the time to walk all the way to the call room and all the way back, I'll just crawl into the bed next to hers. So you can imagine what happened. The team comes in at 7:30 in the morning, and the scene that they thought they found was there are 2 women in labor. One of them's 10 centimeters dilated, ready to go. The other one's obviously in very early labor because she's sound asleep. The medical student has completely disappeared and hasn't checked out to anybody, and the resident is asleep in the call room. So they get the resident, they wheel in a gurney, You know how that's, right? I'm still sound asleep. They transfer the patient to the gurney. I'm still sound asleep. They wheel the gurney out, right? I'm still sound asleep. They deliver the patient. The 2 medical students then come back to admit the lady that hasn't been admitted yet. And when they rolled me over, obviously they figured out who I was. Now, I'm still sound asleep, right? So they decided what they would do is start an IV and tell me that it all went very well and the baby was fine. And then they decided, no, that's not a good idea because the IV would probably wake me up. So they decided to tape the IV to my arm. So the scene that I woke up to was they had raised the sides of the rails on the side of the bed. In those days, we used arm boards for IVs. So they'd gotten out an arm board, they'd torn the tape and put it on the edge of the railing. Someone was actually hanging an IV set. And there was a nurse shaking me awake and saying, you know, there's coffee in the back room. And my 2 friends were going, oh, to her. So obviously I woke up, I was feeling, terrible. Also, my poor patient, what happened to her? So I went back and I found her and I said, how come you didn't wake me up? And she went through transition, she went everything by herself, right? She said, honey, you looked so tired. And then besides that, she said, it wasn't my first baby. I knew what it was supposed to feel like. And most importantly, I knew that if I really needed you, I knew exactly where you were. So what did I learn from that? 3 things I would say. One is you can only trust your buddies so far. The second is be very, very nice to nurses because they can completely save your bacon. But the third one was from the patient, which was accessibility is really important. That patients can be incredibly kind to you if they know that you're accessible. And I think that accessibility goes beyond patients. It goes to accessibility to students, accessibility to your peers. Accessibility is a major part of surviving in education. So if I think about the lessons from the 5 episodes, one is be yourself, let them laugh. One is find flow. And help your students find flow. One is that success is not guaranteed, and you have to learn how to get past that. And one is reflective learning, that how to reflect on what you're doing. And then one is accessibility, that you want to be there for your ensemble. And along those lines, I want to just acknowledge my ensemble. I'd like to start, the dog, Willow, is there to remind me to thank my family. My husband, Hendrik, who, tolerated all of my carrying on for years. My 2 kids, who are here, Nathaniel and Anton, who now have kids of their own, but at the time had to deal with my being accessible to other people at night, on the weekend, whatever, going on a trip. I remember at one point when poor Anton was 3, I was packing to go to a conference somewhere. He jumped into the suitcase and he said, I'm a clothes, Mommy, you pack me. Thank you guys for tolerating all that. And then, my mentors and teachers, people who just were so important to me, these people were my training directors, who taught me, helped me, asked those probing questions, corrected me, etc. Sheldon Benjamin, who's here, has just been an incredible, thank you. He's been an incredible help to me in every way, in learning and reflecting and whatnot. And interestingly, this photograph of him is the announcement of his winning the Gary Tucker Award. So sometimes it all comes back. Carola Eisenberg, who recently passed away, was the Associate Dean for Student Affairs at Harvard. I didn't go to Harvard, but I met her when I was a resident there at Children's. She was just an incredible inspiration to me in every way. And when I became the Associate Dean for Student Affairs, she also became an incredible help on the other end of the telephone. So she was a very important person to me. Aaron Lazar, who was the chair who brought me to UMass and was our previous chancellor, who just gave me lots of opportunities, gave me lots of help, and I taught with him also. So watching the way his teaching style was also wonderful. Susan Gagliardi, who was the first winner of the Chancellor's Medal, who I have been talking to since I got here. In fact, I met her initially on the treadmill at what was then the gym. She'd be running with the treadmill on an angle, and I'd be walking with it flat. But nevertheless, we talked a lot about how can we coordinate and integrate in those days what were two completely different courses. And just watching her teach and her thoughts about education curriculum design, she's just incredible. Guido Mino, who I mentioned before, was the pathologist. He was also a philosopher. And then there are whole bunches of people that I, didn't have the room to put all their photographs on, but, Mark Dershowitz, who, I've also worked with for years and years, and who's teaching style and knowledge about poisons has been, just really useful and helpful. Marjorie Clay, Mike Ennis, just so many people, Dick Glue. It's just, it's hard to think of all the people who were just so inspirational to me and so helpful. Howard and I had long conversations about how to put Camtasia together. I mean, he's just, the people that I've had the privilege of working with in this place are just absolutely phenomenal. And then the about 45 years worth of medical students and residents, when I add being here, being at Dartmouth, and being at Harvard, those have been really my primary teachers. They're the people who ask the probing questions, who show you up where you don't know what you need to do to improve things. So I thank them in absentia for all the teaching that they have given to me. So in addition to those, those 5 messages, what you get to do when you give a last lecture is to say, what is the big message that you want to give? What's the thing you want people to take away from this? And what I'd like to say is that in geologic time, we're only here for an instant. And you want to make the most of that instant. Unexpected things will happen. It's the jazz of your life. Appreciate the jazz of your life. And that's the message I would like to leave you with. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was just such a terrific presentation, and we're most grateful that we've had the opportunity to learn from you this afternoon. And I'm sorry that I've caused you over 1.5 years of panic but it was, to all of us, it was worth every minute of it. So thank you very much. It was a real privilege for us to have the opportunity to learn from you. And you make winning the medal all the more precious for that experience. So thank you very much. It's wonderful to have been together with everyone this afternoon. I thank you very much. For those of you who've been watching at home, thank you for joining us. It is time for us to come back together again as a community. We're very grateful that medicine and vaccines and good behavior is going to allow that, and we look forward to the opportunity over the next few months to come back together again, and all of us look forward to that as well. So thank you very much. It was great to be together this afternoon.